Welcome to the Au Jus. I'm your host, BeefLoaf. This show is being powered by From the 108 and FromThe108.com, where you can get all of our content top to bottom, blogs, podcasts, and videos, including the world-famous Sunday Soak. You can also get our merch there, including the infamous Wave Sucks and hashtag 108ing Garbs. Right now, we actually have another pre-sale going on. We had one last week going on, and that was the Wave Sucks zip-up hoodie. That one's done. Can't get it too late. This one, don't miss out. We have brand spanking new St. Patty's Day t-shirt. They're only $19.99. They're perfect for gallivanting through the city and suburbs this spring, specifically on the day of the namesake. Pre-sale ends tomorrow, so order them shits right now while you're watching this live stream. Get in the store, FromThe108.com. We got a little merch button on the side. Make sure you get in there. This show is powered by you, the loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat. That's how we get paid, and that's how we manage to bring you the brand new content that you know and love. Tonight's guest. He is a charter member of the Sox On 35th crew, currently serving as the editor-in-chief at the website. And you can find all his great work there, as well as simulcast through NBC Sports Chicago's website. He's a three-time Sox Math finalist, always a bridesmaid and never a bride. And he made it to the Final Four of the 108 tourney in 2022, being knocked off in that round by Alyssa Bergamini. Jordan Lazowski, welcome to the Au Jus, my friend. You're on mute, Jordan. Yes.
I haven't done podcasting in a while. Can you tell?
But let me give you credit though, because you practiced perfect etiquette for podcasts. I'm doing the opening read. You should mute yourself. I do that when Treasy's doing his because I don't want to like cough into the mic or snort because I got a big nose or anything like that. Perfect, and then you just forgot to undo the button. You're good, baby. Don't worry about it. I love you. All right.
Appreciate it.
How you been, Jordan?
Good. Can't complain. It's the time of year where we're all trying to figure out what we're doing with ourselves at this point because football's now over, and baseball hasn't been overly exciting at different points throughout the offseason. So trying to figure out what we're doing, but work's good. Baseball season's coming, and coaching's coming too, which I'm really excited for.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're coach now. When do you got to be starting pretty soon coaching, right?
Yeah, so we're starting last week of February. So we've got our coaches meetings these next couple weeks, putting all that fun stuff together, getting the guys ready as best we can. And then once we get to turn them loose, we get going right at the start of March.
That's awesome. That's absolutely great. I mean, there's nothing more exciting than coaching. I used to coach basketball, not at the high school level. I coached at the grammar school level, and I loved the hell out of it. Now, at this point, I don't want to do it anymore. I've put in my 15 whatever years, and so like watching my daughter play, I just want to be a dad fan now. I'm good not coaching anymore.
No, that makes sense.
Dougie Fresh says, Jordan coming out hot with the offseason lettuce. Yeah, that's what I told him right away, Dougie. I said I'm glad he let it flow go because when last time he was on the 108 podcast, we could see it coming out from underneath. I like you committing to the long hair. I'm a long hair guy myself, so I appreciate that. Before we move on here, Matt Lazowski says, who the fuck is this long-haired hippie? Where's my Jordan? And cheers, Matt. Thank you for the drink. It is white wine because it's Monday night. That's how the BeefLoaf's hitting it. So thank you, my friend.
Yeah, the hair has been just hats don't fit anymore. To be honest with we've made a lifestyle change, and as a result, the wallet has to make a sacrifice in the coming weeks soon. So, that's part of it. Also coming straight from work and everything, but mostly the hair. The hats don't fit. The forehead's weird anyway. Like I get these bad lines. Hats don't fit.
Oh, from the hat. Yeah.
It's a long. It presses my. It's just a long story. And I was like, you know what? Rather than try and shove a hat on this thing, just let it be.
Now, is it long enough where you could pull it back in a ponytail or man bun or anything like that?
No.
That's what I do generally all the time with my hair. No, not yet. Okay. All right. Well,
just getting to this point was a lot for me. Let's be clear here. Just
I respect that.
Committing to this and going into it.
I was going to say I'll put up the guest picture again. You had that hair, right? That's a long road to get to the hair you got right now. I respect on all that. Absolutely.
This took a lot of patience as well as just a lot of commitment. I've always been really super short hair, super cut clean, and just try something different. You're old enough at this point to try something new, you know?
That's okay. I love it. Give it a shot. The commenters are aghast. Beef was a coach. Yeah, not baseball. I coached basketball. I played basketball as a younger man. I played at De La Salle back in the day on a really good team. I wasn't one of their better players, but I played on the team. And then I coached basketball for 12, 15 years, somewhere in there at my old grade school and other places. So I definitely did that. Jordan, I wanted to catch up real quick before we get into the baseball topics. What's going on at Sox on 35th? I know last time you were on our podcast, this was a couple months ago, and from the 108 podcast, you had talked about you guys were thinking about bringing your Sox on 35th podcast back. Just want to see kind of what's going on at the website. Obviously, I've seen a bunch of your articles. We're going to talk about some of those today. But what's going on at Sox on 35th these days?
Yeah, we're keeping ourselves busy as best we can. I think it's that part of year for probably all blogs where you're putting all your new content together and you're hoping, let's hope there's a team on the field good enough to make this all worth it.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of what we're at with a lot of things. Podcasts, absolutely still in the works. We're still putting those things together. Really excited about that. But the biggest thing continues to be the
giving you a hard
thing,
time in the comments.
I've gotten a lot of I'll digress real quick. I've gotten a lot of mixed, like, oh, the hair is different. I'm like, is that good? Is that bad? It's like saying it's different. Like, yeah, I know that's kind of the point, but like, what do you think about it? So
yeah, and I love it. Stick with the long hair. Not enough men try to go for the long hair.
Right?
Like me, my Sox Summer and I have been long hair a long time. And Treasy grows a nice long head of hair too. Not all men can do it, I think, is part of the problem. So if you can do it, and you can do it, just let it flow, is my personal opinion. If you like it. Obviously, change up when you need to, but it's nice to be able to shift in either direction.
No, I'm grown to be a fan of it. I was not a fan at first, but I have grown to be a fan of it.
Oh, beautiful.
But yes, Sox on 35th, still at that phase where we're excited to get some new things going, but also it's like you're hoping it's all worth it at this point because you can do all these cool things in your head, and then mid-year it's like, well, no one's paying attention anyways.
Yeah,
so
everyone hates this team.
Exactly. It's like,
and they stink. If that all happens, yeah, it becomes a problem. You gotta. It doesn't feel as fruitful when you get to that point. You put all the hard work in there, and it's like no one's paying attention. They don't like this team.
Right. And it's like you see it in the views, you see it in the comments. It's like there's a point last year. You're reading the comments on articles and stuff, and everyone's just upset. And it tweets too. It's like everyone's just upset and mad, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna put this out. I know what the response is gonna be, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
I love it.
Like, we'll go for it, see what happens. But no, we're excited. We're excited to do some new things this year. Another full year with the crew, another full year with kind of our exec team in the structure. It is expanding beyond myself and Joe. So we're excited about that as well.
Oh, beautiful. That's great to hear. Now, I want to head into a little baseball talk. And I don't know if I want to coach this as cats will fix them talk, but it kind of is in a way, because what we're going to do is talk about some of the tertiary moves the White Sox made. They acquired 4 pitchers in a variety of ways, and I want to kind of go down the list here. I would have loved to do this on the 108 podcast, but Treasy and I don't have the expertise to do this, but you do, so that's why I brought you here. So the first one I want to talk about, the White Sox, at the very beginning of the offseason, it was actually during the I think it was during the meetings and the Rule 5 draft. They went and picked up Nick Avila from San Francisco. He was left unprotected, relief pitcher. Jordan, tell me something about Nick Avila other than I know he's on the 40-man roster.
Yes, I know he's on the 40-man roster. A lot of these guys, and it'll sound like a broken drum after a little bit as we kind of go through all of these. Or whatever the phrase. Broken drum doesn't sound right. You say something and it's not right. Broken clock. I don't know. Whatever. But I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself after a while because there's a lot of things in common with a lot of these guys. Hard throwers, at least one decent off-speed pitch, and for a couple of these guys, some sort of connection to cats. Now, that's not the case in all of these cases. I mean, a couple of guys that came from San Francisco, that's more of the case where somewhere along the line they cross paths and there's something about them that cats likes. So that's kind of where it starts. Mm-hmm. Avila's the same way as a lot of these guys. Good fastball slider combination pitcher. You've seen a lot of success from cats with fastball slider guys. I mean, you went Cease, Rodon became just primarily the fastball slider. Cease was doing the fastball slider. And at his best, Giolito was kind of doing the fastball slider, even though everyone's like fastball changeup. It's like, well, the changeup is a good third pitch to continue to work off. Sometimes he'll go fastball changeup, but you need that true off-speed breaking pitch rather than just the off-speed pitch of a changeup. That's kind of the common theme with a lot of these guys. Avila is a little bit nicer because, you know, you're Jose Ruiz's of the world, those types of guys. Like, now you got a little bit of competition. Instead of just saying Jose Ruiz is the guy, well, now you got a guy who's a Rule 5 draft pick. So either way, you keep him on the roster or you have to send him back. Ruiz is kind of the same thing. Either you keep him on the roster or you risk running him through waivers. I'm not sure how many people are looking for him, but it's kind of the same idea. I think Avila very much falls into that frame of, just this is how teams should be trying to find depth. They shouldn't be spending all of their payroll delegations towards back or front end relievers, essentially.
Right.
It's like at a certain point you have to stop spending money on relievers. And in the past few years, they really didn't do that. They spent a lot of money on relievers and just said, well, we'll kind of see what happens. We're paying more than a quarter of our bullpen, like actual non-league minimum money. This is a start down that road.
This front office has had a reliever kink for the better part of almost a decade here. Like, the David Robertson signing was like that. And even at a point, like when they traded Omar Narvaez for Alex Colomé, it was just so weird. It's like you got a young catcher that gets on base. Why just get a one-inning guy? It was kind of like, and almost like to see a move like this, I liked it just for the pure, like, let's try to gamble and see if we can create some depth with a guy like this. It was interesting. I watched a little film. I never watch film on these guys because I'm like, well, I don't know if they're going to be here long enough for me to give a shit.
Don't waste your time on it.
Well, and I don't even know what I'm looking at half the time. Unless something really sticks out, I don't really know. And for Avila, something did really stick out to me. He's got kind of a weird motion. Like, he almost has a double clutch in the middle of the motion. That's got to be an issue, like, for timing. Like, if you're facing a guy rarely, like you're facing this guy in one-inning spurts, and you'd only see him once every 6 weeks, that's got to be a huge pain in the ass, would be my thought.
And it's something where, because of that, pitches, you hear the term, like, playing up. Like, it might not be the most overpowering fastball. It's a good fastball. It might not be the most overpowering one in baseball. But because of those certain things, the stuff starts to play up. If you do something a little funky, all right, at least I'm seeing the comments now. Okay,
they got
I'm feeling better about this now. When you look at those situations where you have guys who maybe don't have, I mean, they did sign some of these guys 99 plus consistently like that. Right. That's if you're not there, you got to find something else to do, whether it's a great off-speed pitch or something weird in your delivery where now your stuff plays up. Maybe your fastball looks a little faster than it is. That's it. It's a great call out, is something that makes him different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of like that, like right out of the gate, because it made me think of like the mid 2000 teens Orioles bullpens where they just get guys that were all a little bit different from each other. Like the repertoires were different. The deliveries were different, and they try to mix you up in that way. Like if you can't build an elite group of just 99 and then a slider you can't see, maybe this could be another thing. So I was encouraged by the Nick Avila thing, just kind of soup to nuts. It is a little bit, cats will fix them for me, and I think the second guy is as well. The next guy I'm going to get into is Gregory Santos, and the White Sox traded with San Francisco. They traded Cade McClure, Cade McClure was a guy for a minute in the White Sox system, fell out of favor a bit there. Santos comes over here. He had a little bit of major league activity last year, and he's the youngest guy out of this group we're going to talk about. He's still only 23 years old right now. Jordan, what say you about Gregory Santos?
This is the opposite end of that spectrum. This is, let's see how hard I can throw it and see if I can find the strike zone anytime soon. It's the Thiago Vieira, if we remember that name from a few years back, where it's like, there's categories of these things, right? There's those guys who maybe are failed starters that turn relievers. Nick Avila falls into that. He was a starter, turned into a reliever last year exclusively. And if you look at his numbers, that's exactly what kind of happened. He played up, for lack of a better term.
Right, yeah, he's in the middle. 2021, when they switched him in the middle, he stunk as a starter. As soon as they put him in the bullpen, it all shifted. And
that's how it is for a lot of guys too. That's why it's never a bad thing, and you're seeing the Sox do it at times. McClure was one of those guys. They tried doing it at the end of last year. Sometimes, hey, it's just not working. You want to get to the big leagues. Like here's your next best path, and that next best path is, well, let's try being a reliever. For some guys it works, some guys it doesn't. Right. Santos is one of those guys who, let's just see how hard I can throw this thing, but also has some really good off speed. The thing is about his off speed is his slider. It's not as good. It's not as sharp. It has some decent movement here or there, but when you're talking about like looking at the video of it, or you're seeing, it's like, it's fine. It's more so because the fastball plays up so much. It's kind of like the reverse Avila, where his stuff Avila's off speed is maybe a bit better, and it helps play up the fastball. On the Santos end of the spectrum, you have that fastball that's helping play up all the off-speed pitches because you're so geared up for this pitch, and then you get another one. It now becomes, can you find the strike zone enough to be useful? Like for some guys you can, and for some guys you can't, and those are the guys who fizzle out, who sit at AAA and eat innings down there. So
yeah, right. The guys that become Mike McDougal or whoever, like the big, like you said, Thiago Vieira is another big arm guy. Is like, I don't know if the guy can find the plate or not. It's interesting. I was looking up that Santos actually threw 51% ground balls last year, which is kind of encouraging as well. Like, so if he can find it, he throws real hard and you will pound it into the ground. Like, that's a solid skill set, even if they never kind of get the wipeout pitch like you'd like when you're throwing 90, you're pumping 99 with the fastball, you're expecting a big strikeout rate. But if you never kind of get there, and at least you throw ground balls, that's something.
Right. I mean, if you're finding the zone, if you're finding a way to be efficient enough, I guess it's like, again, your walk rate gets high enough. It's not like you're going to turn around and immediately be like, oh, this is how I throw strikes. Like, it's not necessarily that easy. But to your point, it's like, all right, well, I know I have this great fastball. I have this okay off-speed pitch, but I get a lot of ground balls with what I've got. So how do I play up that? And that's something the Sox do a lot with some of those guys. You know, you have the Aaron Bummers of the world, where you just have those specialists who are going to come in and get ground balls, and they like those kinds of guys too. This is kind of where you see a mixture of a couple of those areas where it's like hard thrower and there's something specific about them, like you're saying.
Right. Now, now just to back up quickly, now Avila is a Rule 5 pick, so he has to stay on the 26-man roster, or you need to return him, or figure out an actual trade. You could structure a trade, give something back to the Giants, and then you could kind of work out the rest of it. But otherwise, he's got to be on the 26-man roster. Santos, on the other hand, has at least one option. He's on the 40-man roster. He does not need to be on the major league roster right out of the gate. So he's a guy who could go to Charlotte. They could kind of figure it out. They can create a bit of an up and down situation with him and some of these other guys that they've acquired, but they cannot do that with Nick Avila.
And those guys are valuable too. Options are incredibly valuable. It's the reason Danny Mendick for so long was able to just bounce up and down. You're able to play when you need them and when you're not. Right. And then there's the cases where we spent like all of last year being like, is this the end of Jose Ruiz? Is this the end of Jose Ruiz? Is this the end of Jose Ruiz? It's like, but then you can't move him because that's an arm. It's like, for as much as he's just a low leverage guy, he's still an arm. And you can't just necessarily risk just throwing those away. That's why having those guys with the options is nice, because now you have a guy that, well, even if it's just one option, that's a year of an extra arm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it lengthens your bullpen when you have these guys that can kind of go up and down like that. And the White Sox haven't had it, really. Like, I can't remember the last time they had a lot of up and down. And their roster right now is not really built great for it because, like you mentioned, a guy like Ruiz, you can't send him anywhere. I mean, the only guys on the projected, like, 26-man that are bullpen arms that have options are Aaron Bummer, who you're not sending down, and then Jimmy Lambert. So Jimmy Lambert's your one up and down guy that's kind of locked into a spot currently. I'm excluding Crochet because I will consider him hurt to start the year, but he would be another one. But also, I don't know that you're sending those guys down. You would like to get to the point where you had a group of those guys that are movable, or at least 2 or 3 of those guys. But I guess this is a start. So
yeah, because it's like, again, it's not even just to help against injury; it's to help against ineffectiveness. I mean, at a certain point, you probably prefer just cut the guy if he's really that ineffective. But still, it's like, can we go down to Charlotte, work on a couple things, and try and keep you because we see something good there,
right? Versus
trying to have to cut bait. And guys like Ruiz, you don't have that flexibility, for lack of a better term. Sucks talking about these guys like they're chess pieces, but at the same time, this is how it kind of operates. Is that, you know, options and flexibility is valuable for teams, and that's what, again, these aren't going to be like World Series winning moves, but it helps you along the term lines of, you know, even if it's just like get on a pass fail basis. This is what you're supposed to be doing. These are the guys you're supposed to be adding on and trying to do. And the Sox got away from that the past couple seasons, where it was just, I'm just going to pay this guy and pay this guy and pay this guy, versus, okay, I'm going to sign a couple guys. I'm going to see the vision behind it. And I think it's easier to craft that story of, oh, I see why they signed this guy, versus like when they signed like 6 different second basemen. Like, I don't actually see the reason for this. But with these guys, I see the reason for this. It's kind of the 2 different lanes of it. It's like, well, some of these guys you just need to play infield because we need 26 guys. Other guys like, oh, this makes sense essentially.
Absolutely. The next guy I want to get to, and you wrote about him at Sox on 35th, is AJ Alexy. He's actually a starting pitcher. The White Sox signed him off of waivers from Minnesota. I think it was. I want to say it was after the big trade where they traded Arias, but I could be wrong. No, maybe it was the Michael Taylor trade. I know it was after one of their trades.
Taylor.
It was the Michael Taylor trade. Okay, yeah, that's right. He bounced around quite a bit this offseason. I think he was also mixed in with the Nationals, and so Alexy's had quite an offseason. Tell me a little bit about AJ Alexy.
Alexy's fascinating because when you look at it, he has the most major league experience out of any of these guys. He was there both 2021, 2022 spurts, not really great at either point. Don't quote me on like this being great, valuable major league experience.
Right.
But you look at it from the standpoint of, okay, this is a guy that, what are we at? 6, 7, we got maybe 7, 8, 8th starting pitcher type thing. Like once you get past whatever happens with Clevenger, then you have Davis Martin would probably be your next man up. If you try and make some sort of Crochet Lambert combination, right. Sean Burke.
I mean, it's still thin real fast.
So it's like, it's still real thin, but if you're going to be thin, at least have 4 or 5 different thin options, right? It's like, don't be like, well, all we have now is Sean Burke, and Sean Burke's not ready, but Sean Burke's going to be on the mound tomorrow. Avoid that where possible. Alexy's interesting because he's also going only into his age 25 season. I think you mentioned that Santos was 22 or 23. Avila was the same thing, about 24, I want to say. They're all around that same age, where it's not like we just signed a bunch of 28-year-old arms. There was a method to this where a younger type arm is available. Let's see what we can do with it. Alexy, kind of the same idea. Top 2 pitches, fastball, slider. Then from there, curveball. It's Katz has a method that works for him, and he sees what works. I mean, it's still early to say it works, but you have some data points where you're like, okay, you have Rodon, you have Cease, you have Giolito. It's like, all right, you have enough cases. Lopez is another one where you can start to put that narrative together that he has some sort of idea with these fastball slider combos that don't really know where home plate is.
Right.
Let's see what we've got with this. Let's see if 1 or 2 of these guys pop out, just so you have some of that length, that depth. That, I mean, it's not sexy by any stretch of the word, but again, it's viable major league talent. That's like worst case scenario, and it's like, again, not every team is eight pitchers deep. Not every team has got the Padres mentality of just sign every starting pitcher known to man. So you're going to have these guys if you get far enough down the line. But you have a rotation with a lot of risk in it. It makes sense to do these types of things. You can't just... Relievers are nice, and relievers is exactly what you should be doing. You need to do it on the starting pitching side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then the White Sox have had a bit of a stalling in their minor leagues, and as far as developing starting pitchers. And we talked about some of the guys have been, like Jimmy Lambert has been a convert. He's been good. He was good in the bullpen last year. Reynaldo Lopez convert. Like they've had a kind of a lot of these guys where they haven't been able to get them across the line, and even some of the higher draft picks that they've spent or what they've spent up as far as like bonus pool money, they're just not getting it there. And I agree with AJ Alexy. Jordan, we just need a guy who, like, if there's a double header, we have confidence he can come up and start and give us 4 innings or 3 innings or something like that. Like, I think we're at that point of, let alone like filling in a spot long term. I'm just talking, what about if you have a bunch of games in a row or a double header and you need to get a guy up here to do something? Like, I think they at a minimum needed to do that. And AJ Alexy seems like the type of guy that would be. You're right. He's only 25. He occupies a 40-man roster spot. He has 1 option, so this will be his last year with an option. Him and Santos both only have 1 remaining option, so this is kind of your runway to figure these guys out and see where they go. Now, in the starting pitcher depth chart, I mean, he's got to be kind of right behind Davis Martin, I think, right?
it becomes like, do they like Martin, or excuse me, do they like Burke or Alexy better? I think there's been a lot of talking him up Burke up this.
There has been
this offseason. There's been a lot of talking about Burke, and I get it. I absolutely get it. You've seen what he was able to do about the second half last year. He kind of just there have been a lot of conversations about it. Yes, for as bad as the starting pitching depth is, apparently it was worse last year. Like doing those farm reports. So we would do the farm reports.
Yeah.
And then you'd go in and be like, why were there 8 pitchers yesterday who all threw an inning? And then why were they all, and it's like the night before that too. And that too. Apparently everyone was hurt at some point and they had one starter down there. So yes, it's for as bad as it still is now, it was somehow worse last year.
Exactly. But Ian in the comments says, I think Burke needs some time to marinate. I agree. He's kind of a fairly new draft pick. They've rocketed him up the system. It's not like he had, Dwight Gooden's A-ball year at age 18 or something like that, where it's like, oh, well, this guy needs to leap up the system. That's just like, they don't got anyone. Like you mentioned, Jordan, they're down to one starter at some point. At a point, you're just like, here's our best guy. We're going to start pushing him because we need something.
Right. And I mean, some guys can handle that better than others. You can't push every guy because God forbid you push them too far and now you screwed with development, and then all of a sudden, God rest his soul in my life, but Carson Fulmer, you end up with another one of those. He's with the Mariners now. It's still going. The dream's not dead.
I know. And actually, my Sox owner wanted to make sure that we brought him up at some point. I'm glad it was you, not me. So I no baiting or nothing. I'm glad you brought it up on your own. You got it out there in front of you. That's good. I appreciate that.
But it's those types of guys where it's like, if you rush them too quickly, it's like, well, now you took something that was talent, and maybe it wasn't 8th overall draft pick talent.
Right.
But there was still talent there that maybe had you not rushed, or maybe had you had a better development plan that wasn't absolutely not dead yet. Just wait till that breakout happens. But when you get to a certain point where it's like, if you don't have a proper development plan, you've kind of screwed yourself essentially, and the player at the end of the day. Sure. So I'd like to see Burke fall below Alexy for the simple fact of, it felt like they rushed Martin last year, and it kind of worked out with Martin. Like Martin has pretty good 6 starter stuff, 5 starters. Sure. He has pretty good stuff.
Yep.
I'd like to see if they could do the same with Alexy somehow this year. I'd like him to kind of fill that sort of role. And I guess again with it, you look at Crochet being someone, if he's healthy, how many innings are they going to push him? Let's just say it's 80. Well, then that's a spot start here and there, and that's just how far are you willing to push him? It's the development plan. Where does Burke fall? Where does Burke's development plan fall in terms of in the course of this year? And if it doesn't fit, then push Alexy forward. If it does, at a certain point, you have to, if you're a manager, if you're a general manager putting this together, you have to trust what your farm director is telling you, for good or for bad.
Yeah. You're right. At some point, you got to go for it, and at some point, you're going to take some gambles in these spots. Like if they do try Burke and it works out, let's say he comes up and he has a spot starter too, and he looks good, and then we're like, okay, this looks sustainable or something. Okay, now you have another guy. Now lock it in. You got another guy, and these guys got options. And so good outcomes can also happen from this. Nathan Sheba, thanks for the drink. He said, yes, I'm blaming Han for Fulmer as well. Hashtag Teflon Han. He's all up, and I love seeing you in the comments, Nathan. Thank you for the drink, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. I am reading the comments as they're coming in.
We have the 108 podcast group. We have vibrant comments, and we appreciate it. We no problem with all of you hurling insults at me. I absolutely love that shit. The final guy that I want to go over out of this group of what I was calling spare part pitchers is Franklin German. I want to say Herman, but German is the way I'm hearing it's pronounced. Was traded from the Boston Red Sox to the White Sox for Theo Dellinger. And when I first saw this on Twitter, people were applauding, oh, this guy's the pitcher of the year or whatever. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I dug in deeper. I'm like, well, he got DFA'd when Richard Blyer was traded for and brought over. They just couldn't afford to have this guy on the 40-man roster. So for me, it brought down my excitement a little bit. But German had a really nice year last year, and Theo Dellinger isn't much to give up. So tell me a little bit about German. I know you wrote about him at Sox on 35th. Tell me, what say you, Jordan?
It's interesting. It's one of those things where, again, you have the common arsenal that all of these guys have had. It's nothing new with German or German, whatever we're calling him
However
at
it's
this point.
pronounced, I don't know yet. We'll find out.
It's nothing new in that aspect. What it feels like, I mean, you can debate where the Red Sox really are as a team.
Right.
I think when you lose Trevor Story and you just lost Xander Bogaerts, it doesn't matter if you sign Rafael Devers for 13 years, you might not be that good this year. Just
Right.
truthfully looking at the team, it's a scenario where does a 25, 26-year-old maybe decent arm at the major league level make your 40-man roster at that point? It feels like an opportunity the Sox just happened to get lucky enough to be like, oh, we like this guy. We see something good here. He became available. Awesome. It's worth giving up what we consider to be someone who's probably not going to move the needle too much for us, at least in the near future. You got a 26-year-old who's in AA or AAA versus a guy who was just a minor league pitcher of the year for the Red Sox, and he also made it to the major league level. In terms of development paths, he's a little bit further ahead at the same age. So in terms of what you swapped, you probably didn't swap all that much, to be honest with you. But it gives you something kind of along all of these lines. A guy with options, a guy who has the ability to move up and down just a little bit, give you that flexibility if something happens at the front. I keep on the front end of the bullpen, but those mop-up type roles.
Sure. Jose Ruiz types.
Exactly.
Basically.
The Jose Ruiz, you can mix and match with those a little bit more.
Right.
And it's nice to have that flexibility is essentially what it comes down to at the end of the day. Again, it's not necessarily a needle moving move, but it's more so it's an opportunistic, he's a little bit further in his development path. Let's see what we can do with him type move.
Yeah, the one nice thing though is he does have three options. So he was kind of new to the 40 man, and then they needed to make room for him. One critique on my end, and this is more of a organizational critique. I have no problem taking a shot at a guy like this. To me, you're right; it doesn't move the needle, but I like the composition of all of these moves. The only bad part about all of these moves is that you didn't have your own internal depth that you developed. Like I would like a time period when the White Sox are on the other end of this. Jordan, I want to read them in that Fangraphs article that they put out every year about the teams are going to have the 40-man crunch, and they got 47 guys that should be on the 40-man, like the Rays or Guardians, whoever. I would like the White Sox to be one of those teams. Like, what are they going to do with all these guys? Right now, they're catching them. Which, okay, I mean, it's at least they are catching them. Is one thought.
And I think it's in some ways a recognition, I guess, that there are some arms that hey maybe we like, but maybe we're not ready yet with them. Yep. But it is also a recognition of it'd be nice to be those guys who are like there's the Nicholas Padillas of the world where it's like, how are you surviving this, but also not really showing us that you're going to be somebody that we can add to this type of mix and match group.
Right.
That's really the only name where it's like, otherwise I'm like, who are these guys? What's the kind of the role there? Or it's guys like Brian Ramos who are further down the line, and that's fine. But that doesn't help you right now. It would be nice, absolutely, to have those guys where you're not, I mean, you're really not spending on these types of guys, but you're able to do this yourself, or you're able to find those opportunistic type moves yourself to where, hey, maybe you got someone we really like and you don't like him that it's you're not going to find that all that often today, but more so, is there a guy maybe who's a little bit further ahead in their development, and we can kind of make a swap here or something like that. But it'd be nice to be on the other end, to your point.
Absolutely.
It would. It's just, again, it's years of trying to build up depth. And I think, depending on who you read, depending on what you listen to, things are in better situations than they have been in terms of the minor league development idea, even if they're not fruitful just yet. I think it's at the point where you're like, all right, you're hearing better things. Maybe it's worth giving that chance, but I'd like to see something coming out of this.
That's right. We'd like to see a little results. I'm right there with you. Before we keep going on this topic, because I do want to get to the macro view of kind of these moves and just our thought process there. Gordo, thanks so much for the drink. I appreciate it, my friend. And you're right about that with regards to the farm system. I had Mike Rankin on this show about a month ago, and I asked him, I said, Me, the White Sox fan, I'm hearing all these great things about Chris Getz. Why should I believe it when I don't see anything bubbling up? And he did a good job of explaining how, yeah, he's kind of like brought everything into where you need to be. So they're catching up. They're not innovating anything. They're just kind of bringing it back up to a level. Right. And it's like, yeah, understood. Like as a fan, it's understood that you're a little skeptical because you haven't seen anything. And like you mentioned here, Jordan, what they're doing here to me looks like, okay, they're kind of catching up to what these 40-man should look like. The 40-man for all these years, even years where we're like, we have a good team, had so many goddamn dead spots in it. When I look at the 40-man right this second, well, one off, out of the guys that are in the minors, so you got 26 men on the major league roster, and you have 14 in the minor league roster. I'm counting 9-10 pitchers, okay? That's more than they've ever had. So they're ready to kind of like shuffle back and forth. Now, they don't have the starting pitching depth, but they do have the bullpen depth 100% on this 40-man. The other thing I notice is, you mentioned him, Brian Ramos is the only guy on this 40-man, in theory, who's not ready to help this team this year. He's the only guy who probably you would never see this year. The rest of the guys, in theory, and that's what a 40-man's supposed to be for, are useful right now.
Right.
Can't be
like
used
you're gonna
on the
have
team.
those. You have to have those spots where eventually you have to protect a guy you'd prefer, like they're further along in their development. But that's fine. But yeah, you'd like more of these guys to be like you're playing a mix and match type game where necessary. It doesn't have to be every single spot that exists in your bullpen, in your rotation, what have you. But again, when you're a guy who has good enough stuff to be pitching in the major leagues at some point last year, but also again minor league pitcher of the year, it means something at some point. It means something to where it's like, okay, what did you see here? What might have been of use to us at this level? Again, none of these are going to make us claim World Series champions tomorrow, but it's like, all right, this is what teams are supposed to do. This is where you get back to that path of building out of that 25th, 26th ranked farm system.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Let me throw one hypothetical at you here, Jordan, before we move on off this topic. I had this thought in the shower. I said, to me, what this looks like, it looks like one of two things that Rick Hahn's coming to a realization of, and I want to get your thoughts here. Maybe it's both, but I think it's one of two things. One, he's starting to realize that all those relievers that he was buying and trading for all these past years, that the market price has gotten up to the point where he doesn't feel like he's got an advantage there. And so now he's backing off from that strategy, and he's going for a strategy of like sifting around. And maybe part of it is the fact that he's become more comfortable with Ethan Katz's evaluations and really trusts him now, right? We got off of the Don Cooper era where, Coop did a great job for a long time, but the end there, it was pretty rough. It was over, basically. Like, and moving in with Ethan Katz, it was like, you want to give a little time so that you're sure that you trust this guy completely if you're going to kind of go on all these projects. It seems like he does now. So I thought maybe it's a shift in philosophy from one perspective. And then the skeptical mind of mine said, is he preparing for selling all these relievers in July? The ones that make money on this team. And I was like, oh shit, is this the backup? Not saying he thinks they'll be bad, but in case it doesn't pan out, here's all my guys that are coming because I'm going to sell the Kendall Gravemans and Liam Hendricks and Joe Kellys of the world. What do you think, Jordan?
It's a fascinating question. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that I think you have to look at this team and you have to do any sort of risk assessment and be like, what if this doesn't work?
Right.
So it's like, I get the idea that yes, you're going to need arms somewhere down the line. So yeah, if shit hits the fan and this is not going well in July, you would see those names moved. You need somebody to fill in and finish this season for whatever it is at this point.
Yep.
So I absolutely understand that side of the coin. That being said, I also think, to your point, I think the biggest thing all of these moves represented, from even the original Clevenger signing before all of the information came out about him.
Yep.
There's a lot more trust in what Katz sees in pitchers. Yep. And what Katz has as his, what's the word I'm looking for? Like his vision for what the White Sox pitching staff looks like. It has these types of players. It is currently missing these types of players. And at the front end, those mop-up roles, we need these types of guys, and I need to be able to mix and match for these different reasons. I think that's the biggest thing these moves signal. Just the entire offseason has been there's a little bit more trust in Katz and maybe his long-term fit with this team. versus feeling like, yes, Cats will fix them.
That's right.
Versus feeling like, and again, it's you don't know what happened the past 2 years. You don't know who had all of the influence in the room.
Right.
It's not out of the question to say with a change in leadership in the dugout that maybe the Joe Kellys of the world weren't actually necessary. You look at it from the perspective of, I think there were the rumors at the time, like La Russa was a huge influence on the Kelly move.
Right.
You don't know where some of these things, it's like, now is everybody pulling the same way? You hope. Is people pulling the same way?
Right.
Or is it's not even just people pulling the same way. It's more so Cats has a louder voice in the dugout. I would like that to be the case.
I think that's
simply
what it is,
because it's like, I'd rather that be the case simply because, that's your pitching coach. And you need to figure out if he's going to be good at his job sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the CEO of the pitching,
right?
And you're right. I think it is a louder voice, and especially with a brand new manager, it kind of makes sense that he would have a louder voice. He will have more say in this, and maybe that's kind of how they're managing it. Like, it was weird to me that like the Charlie Montoya thing, but it's not as weird when you back up that okay, well they plucked basically another manager and put him down. What they're looking at here is like, let's get a bunch of smart guys in here, and yeah, nominally Pedro is the leader, or maybe he's like a CEO type. He's great at delegating, whatever. And so like, but they're getting more baseball minds in there and trusting them in their specific categories. And I think you're seeing that with Cats for sure with these moves.
Baseball has become so specialized in that way. That's the correct model. You don't need some overarching overlord as the manager who's the dictatorial final say on everything necessarily. Right. It's good to be that CEO. CEOs have managers and directors for a reason. These are people that ultimately have a lot of say in what goes on in their area.
Right.
And that's how it should be. That's how the White Sox, it's how other teams operate. At the very least, if you're finally catching up, like that's a good thing. It's
good.
Like you might not be setting trends, but at least you're not falling behind any further. Like I that's what it comes down to. It's like, yes, it's nice that they're catching up.
Yeah.
And it's whether or not they're on the same page isn't necessarily as important as is the person in charge of building a staff getting his say on said staff. Right. And I think that's what these moves signify. It's what keeping him in the dugout in the first place signifies. They're like, okay, we see his vision and we like the vision, or like we like him enough to keep him around to at least see with a different staff what he may be like. And again, it's you want to get those evals on guys. You don't want to sit here 5-6 years and then realize, hey, maybe this isn't the guy for the job. Give him that.
Let's find out now.
Yes, let's find out now, figure it out, and make the change if necessary, especially early on with a new staff.
That's right. You got 2 years in. You kind of trust him. Let's go for it. Let's see what he's got.
Right. Now let's see. Okay, you're moving up the chain now. Let's figure this out.
Let's go. Chuck says college of coaches. I sure as fuck hope not. I don't think that's what they're going for. I think it's more your little area, not going to be now you're in charge for the day or whatever. And Jerry O'Sullivan says is Kopech still going to be on an innings limit, or are they going to finally let him pitch full throttle? I mean, my thought here is like, I know he's got the knee. I think that's the only thing holding him back. I would think at this point, you're probably, you're going to throw him as many innings as you think you can throw him. He's a great athlete. Like, let's see how much he holds up. The only problem with him is, like, when his stuff declined at any point during, he was brutal. Like, he's a guy who needs to have his top stuff. He's not going to Johnny Cueto himself out there with half of his repertoire. Moving on to the next topic, and this one will be a real quick one for us. Dan Zaborski from Fangraphs put out a Zips projection. The White Sox standing, they were projected to have 74 wins. I actually wrote a blog about this because I was scratching my head at solo of a win total. I understand, the fan sentiment being down, given all the things that we're actually working through every single day with this team over the last couple of years. But an objective model throwing out 74 wins was a shocker to me. Jordan, what did you think about that projection?
I loved the initial fan reaction because for the past 2 years, we have been so set, we collectively have been so dead set on the idea that projections were underrating the White Sox. Like, it was a thing. It's like, whatever it was, like 85 last year, 87 last year. It's like, that's way too low. And then whatever it was the year before, that's way too low. Now it's low to the point where I'm like, 74? And people are like, oh, yeah, that's right. This team sucks. I'm like, Like, what are we doing here? We just spent 2 years saying these were wrong, and now it's like, well, now we're mad, so now they're right. Like, I just the initial reaction was funny. And when you look at just the concept behind projections, the concept behind projections is, maybe you take 3 years worth of data, and Dan has actually put out a lot on how much he puts into it. But with projections, it's always the most recent season matters the most. And the Sox sucked last year, and they were really bad. And they still won 81 games.
Yep.
So for me to sit here and say there's losing Jose Abreu and Johnny Cueto and adding Andrew Benintendi and maybe Mike Clevenger was a loss of 7 wins. I'm not really confident enough to say that. I'm really not confident enough to say that Johnny Cueto plus Jose Abreu was that big of a and to replace them with Benintendi, who is solid again. And you look at those projections too. Like Abreu's projected for 2.8 WAR this year. Benintendi's 3.1. And it's like, where are these? Where's the 74? For me, it was like, where's the 74 coming from?
Right. The juxtaposition of Abreu had a 4-win year last year, but that doesn't mean his year 37 season or 36, whatever he is going to project to be that again. Same thing with Cueto. Cueto had a great year last year, but it doesn't mean the projection's going to line up because these guys are older guys. Like, what the heck?
The 74, I'm like, yeah, I think for a lot of people, 83 is a good starting number. Mm-hmm. Like, I still think they can beat 83.
Yeah, and the sports books are fluctuating between 83.5 and 86.5, depending on where you
And I think 83 is a good start just because, you take the 81 from last year, you take some projections, and the Sox are right around, if you take Zips, it's like Abreu and Benintendi are basically canceling each other out. Cueto and the combination of Clevenger Martin essentially negates each other, maybe a little bit higher here and there. So it's like 83 feels about right for that sort of projection start. But yeah, 74 just assumes everyone's going to be as bad as last year and worse. And Jose Abreu was that big of a deal that it's all going to cost you 7 wins. I just don't see where that comes in. I see someone mention Liam Hendricks. I don't feel that gets you to 74. I think there's enough in guys like Lopez and Graveman and Bummer if he's pitching well. I think there's enough there to carry the load. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be Liam Hendricks. You're probably going to blow a few more saves, but for me, it still doesn't add up to we lost 7 wins with this roster.
Seems unlikely here. And Chuck, thank you so much. He says this should buy about a shot of Beef's high-end vino. You know what? $5 would be about a shot worth of some of those big bottles. Thank you very much.
So you put it all together, and again, I get it is fair to be down on this team, and it's understandable that projections are down on this team. Again, when you take the most recent year of data as the most important part of your projection, yes, projections are going to be lower on this team. For sure, I was not surprised by the directionally how low the number, the number, but it was how low it got. Again, I just don't see a world where it's at, even if it is and last year was pretty bad. You had Robert swinging with one arm for 2 months of the season. Yeah, you had Eloy in and out. You had Moncada not show up. You were without Anderson.
I mean, Yaz was horrible.
Yaz was terrible, like generationally bad. Yeah, and you still won 81 games. And it's because of your rotation, which is returning most of the same members.
Well, this is the part I found funny. So I ripped some of these zips, and I'll put them up on the board here for everyone to look at. I put kind of the starters up there. The Zips projections believes that 7 of the position player starters are going to be 12% or higher above average on offense by WRC plus, all the way up to Andrew Vaughn at the top at 132 and Eloy Jimenez 128, just hiding a little bit behind him. And then the other starters, projected starters, Romy Gonzalez, not great at 82, WRC plus, Oscar Colas 94. But even when you start bringing the bench in and then assuming more plate appearances of other people, it's a solidly above average offense. That's their projection telling us that. So when you go over to the pitcher side, you start looking and say, okay, well, they don't believe Dylan Cease is the Cy Young runner-up again, but almost no one gets that sort of projection. There's a nice goal up for Lucas Giolito, and that's where it starts to fall off. it doesn't believe Lance Lynn at this age is going to be as durable as he has been. The projection model hates Michael Kopech, and in theory, it hates the depth that the White Sox have built at starting pitcher, which is reasonable. It's almost like a dread risk situation, Jordan. It's like they believe that so many starts out of these 162 starts are going to be guys that are off the table bad, and that's going to drag the projection. And so, it's up to these starting pitchers to stay healthy and perform like we all know they can.
Yeah, it's going to come down to the starting pitching again. I don't know. I still think you look at those projections like, yeah, some of those are fair. Kopech didn't really feel fair, but I get it. I get it because, again, you have to go off of what last season was, so I get it. But you look at it in totality, and you're like, all right, where are these? Like, it's an above-average offense for all intents and purposes, assuming all goes well. And I think you assume, and like we can get dinged for saying assuming all goes well, but that's what projections are essentially for. Like, if you take the 50th percentile, you assume most things probably went okay. That's what a 50th percentile projection is. Most things went probably fine. And I think that's, again, if you take the probably fine outcome for most of this team, it results in more than 74 wins by a fair amount, to be honest with you. Like, for as down as we are on this team, and it's been the hardest thing. Like, I'm already thinking about like off-season grades and stuff. I'm like, for as hard as we are on this team, I'm like, it's not you put it on paper, it's not a 74 win roster. Like,
it's a decent roster. When you look at it, I put a tweet out the other day. I'm looking forward to the beginning of the season, Jordan, because everyone's so down on this team. The ballpark should be empty. I'll have the lay of the land. It'll be fast to get a beer and get to the bathroom.
Right.
And we're going to have a decent team out there. It'll be some good ball for me to watch while it's not that crowded. And it's like, I can't look at it any other way than, yeah, okay, maybe you don't believe in the superstar projections that we once had for some of these guys, but it's still a decent squad up and down. Like, it's a solid team minimum,
Right, exactly. And you view it from that standpoint, it's like, all right, even if you get, like, again, I think we've long moved past all of these guys are superstars, but you still get 60, 70th percentile projection production from these guys. It's still really, really good baseball. Like, that's the hardest part about all this. It's still really good baseball from a lot of these guys, assuming you get to that point.
Absolutely. Jordan, thanks so much for bestowing your White Sox thoughts on spare pitching parts, as well as the 74-win Zips projection. Remember, on this show, we're not trying to be right. We're just trying to understand. Do you have anything you want to plug before you get out of here?
No, just the usual. Sox on 35th. Hope you guys continue to enjoy us this year. Like I said when we started, just plenty of new stuff coming up. Plenty to be excited about from all of our writers, from all of our team. So excited for our, oh my God, I think this is the 7th year. I think Joe and I said we're doing, like, 7th season we're doing this.
Yeah, we started about the same time.
Yeah.
We're both on year 7. 108 and Sox on 35th, we started about the same time.
Age is creeping up for me. I'm hitting 25, 26. I'm like, I started this when I was 19 years old.
Bro, I'm 44. Get with it, all right? Get your energy up, kid. All right, let's fucking go.
But no, we're excited about this. Again, it's another year with a full team like this, and with that comes a lot of cool things we're going to be able to do. So very excited about that. And if you enjoy my dumb things I post on Twitter once in a while, follow me. But
that's right. Give Jordan a follow on Twitter. Thanks, Jordan. Take care, brother. Appreciate you.
Of course. Take care. Thanks so much, everyone.
That was Jordan Lazowski. Next week's guest is NWI Steve from On Tap Sports, longtime guy. We're going to discuss how he was originally part of the creation of the Dollar Dog competition that we did in 2019. I also want to get into why he thinks we're on the precipice of rebuild 3.0 with the White Sox. I don't quite understand it, but I want to hear what he has to say. Thanks again to Jordan Lazowski. Thanks to all the 108 families up in the comments. Appreciate you all of you smashing the like button, comments. Of course, the drinks, including my guy, Nathan Sheba. He says, thank you. Commander Bauer, 5 years taken from us. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, our neighbor here in Bridgeport. Cheers, Nathan. Appreciate that. He's still commemorated right by the ballpark. They have a horse right there that commemorates Commander Bauer. So appreciate that. Peace to all of you. Take care. Love you. See you in the 108 podcast this